What's up, guys? It's the boy The Life of Soul, aka the bodybuilding banker. There's been a lot of high demand and I'm back with a special guest. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello everyone, my name is Avi Sharma, also known as Avi TV. I was on the BBC Apprentice and I'm looking forward to this one.
Likewise, we actually met at the Forbes Family Group event, right?
Yeah.
And we instantly connected. How did you find that event, first of all?
It was incredible. I was very lucky. I sat in the front row, in the same row as Dean Forbes himself.
Amazing.
And Tim Campbell. And so I was seeing all the action from a great point of view. But yeah, one of my highlights was hearing all about Tim Armu's story. And I think he recently closed. He sold his business for tens of millions. But it was great just to see, you know, the little things that maybe most people don't hear about. Yeah,
I agree with you. Tim is an amazing guy. He actually went to my university, right? He had the foresight to build a business. But one of the interesting things about him and success is it's how people think of it, because it's a huge goal. But what we really loved about Tim was he was able to break it into little component parts. So what do you think are some of the key things that you have seen now you've been on Apprentice and seen the likes of Alan Sugar when it comes to success?
So firstly, I think patience is a big thing. You know, having the patience, knowing that, yes, you might be 20, 21 and you have no clue what to do in your life. You might even be 31. You might even be 41. But in any case, you've got a lot of time in the scheme of things. Just being patient and consistent, I think, is one thing I need to do more of.
That's a great tip, actually, and I'll probably take that going forward. I also think it's important to set goalposts and have people that are accountable towards you. Reason being is because if we don't have accountability, we tend to move the goalposts. So let's just say we were working together on a business and I told you I'm going to do 500 outbound calls. Sometimes it's easy to let ourselves down. So by having you accountable, it's going to allow me to achieve that goal because I know Abby's going to check in with me. So one of my mentors said that any problem you face is a problem of ignorance, because every problem that you are facing has already been overcome. So your job is to find out how they done it or who is required to help me get to the finish line. So success is not always what you know, it's who you know, because you can have the information, but you need assimilation. You need to know how to take that information and make it practical.
I really like what you said there, and it's a brilliant quote, isn't it? It's not what you know, it's who you know. But I want to take that a step further. We always hear that, don't we? Yeah. And it's not who you know, but it's who knows you. You know, trying to put yourself out there, position yourself in such a way that when you do ask for help, people want to help you. We've been on both sides of the coin where we've been the ones asking for help. Oh, how do I overcome this assessment center? We were both surely that guy on LinkedIn, right? Yeah, but then I'm sure the roles are reversed and you've become the guy on the other side, and you've had those young, ambitious, budding people asking you the same thing. Sure. Right? How do I ace this interview? The ones who I actually really want to help are the ones who come across in a certain way. Of course. Would you say that's the same for you?
I agree with you. You have to make sure that you show enthusiasm. I learned this technique that whenever you're doing cold outbound, that you should be very specific on the outcome you're trying to achieve. I'm often sent a lot of messages, and when you're sent a lot of messages, it's hard to respond to everyone. So the people I tend to resonate with are the people that may have done some research. For example, if someone was sending me a cold outbound message, it would be, hey, so I loved what you discussed on this video. It really resonated with me. This is what I'm going through. I'd love 10 minutes of your time to potentially ask some questions. Are you free within these dates? It makes my job easier to go in and respond. But if someone just comes in with a vague message and says, hey, so when are you free? Again, it doesn't resonate with me. I am quite busy. And although I try to answer everyone, it doesn't give me enough direction. It doesn't make the job easy for me. So one tip is when you're reaching out to someone, I'd always prioritize using warm intros. So if you have any mutual connections, that'd be really helpful. If that's not the case, do some research, make their job easier, appeal to their ego, because they're likely to remember you and they'll give you their time.
I love that so much. What you said, it just triggered a memory for me from when I was back in banking. I was very fresh into the bank, maybe 6 months in, and you know when you're new and you have to organize meetings with people, that's one thing that I had to do. I remember asking that very naive question, when are you free? But people don't realize when you ask that, you're putting the onus on the other person. You're actually making them put in work. You're asking a favor of somebody else, then you're making them put in work by having to look in their diary, pick a time and a date that suits them, and then come back to you. So I stopped doing that. My manager said, don't put the onus on the other person. It's all on you. If you're asking a favor from somebody else, you want even just 10 minutes of their time. And that's another thing I liked about what you said. Don't ask the whole world. It's easy to agree to just 10 minutes. Give them a few options. To be honest, it's not just in a work sense. Even if you're trying to ask a girl out on a date, you can just say to them, hey, 8 p.m, Saturday, I'm going to this place already. Do you want to come with me? That's a lot easier for a girl to say yes to than when are you free?
That's an interesting dichotomy, because most people, when it comes to networking or outbound, don't use what is already working for them. When you're talking to a girl or anyone, you're more effective when you give across certainty. So you give a time, you give a place, you know where you're going. That's why I always preach that you should work backwards. Know where you are going and then build the steps in between, so you're a lot clearer about your goals. So if you're meeting someone, say in your instance, Lord Sugar, he has limited time. He's a very busy man. If you go in with 10 questions, he's unlikely to answer all 10. If you go in with one specific question or two specific questions that show that you've done relevant research, he's more likely to support you.
Oh, definitely. It makes it easier for him. It makes him want to do it. What would you say you've learned from your time, in particular, dealing with people?
Sure, that's a good question. So I'll split that into two parts. First, there was the learning process of getting into investment banking. I knew from university I just work backwards. Outside of having top academic grades, going to a top university, you had to understand the financial language and convey it in a very simple way, and also succinctly tell them about your experiences and highlight the key competencies or the skills required in the job. So that was a module in itself. And wow. The easiest way to do that is to speak to people who have been successful, find out their views and try and apply it to your methods. So the whole process of investment banking requires you, in some cases, do a spring week. So that's in your first or second year of a 4-year course. Then you do a summer internship process where you work in investment bank, you experience the day-to-day activities, and you make that choice whether it's something for you and whether the team likes you, and then going into the full-time role. I've learned how to deliver high-quality work. Good is expected. In school, we get a pat on the back depending on how well we do. That's why you have different grades. You have an A, you have an A star for getting a certain percentage, whereas in the world of work, particularly in investment banking, excellence is expected. So that helps to build a muscle which requires you to make sure that you are performing. It's a performance culture, so you are ranked based on how well you do. It pushes that idea of making sure you can be the best person possible, making sure that you deliver work on time, making sure that your numbers are correct, making sure that there's few mistakes as possible. And it was challenging because you can work anything from 80 to 100 hours a week on little sleep. The more softer things that I've learned is being able to communicate my ideas effectively. Time is of the essence. If a managing director wanted to know what a set of public companies are doing, wanted a news overview, it's that ability to succinctly go into the market, find out what's happening and relay it in 3 or 4 points. Managing expectations is another one, because people have different personalities, and so it's important to understand what works with them and be able to be cohesive in a team, but also help or work towards people's personalities. Being both a good listener and a good speaker, because listening is probably more important in the job because you're constantly learning. No 2 days are the same. So it's very good to listen and get it right first time. They trust you a lot more and they give you more responsibility, and your level of exposure increases.
Incredible. Okay, we covered loads of things there. To what extent would you say that under promise, over deliver is something that you embodied at work?
I think that's something I learned as a first year, but I didn't really apply it till the second or third year. My first year as an investment banking analyst, you want to be perceived as a safe pair of hands. So if someone was to give you work, you want to make sure that you deliver that work to a very high standard so they can trust you, give you more work. I would always under-promise from a timeline perspective. There's 2 stages. There's delivering the work, and then there's another stage where you have to ask certain questions. In that information gathering process, you understand everything so you can deliver work to the highest quality. When it comes to under promise and over deliver, one of the tips I would do is span the deadline to a timeline that is agreeable between both parties. What I mean is, if the work is going to take you 3 hours, maybe say it's going to take you 6 hours, because you might finish the work, but you need to check for errors. You need to check if the numbers make sense. And for any circumstances that are out of your control, if you get different people asking you for work. That's something that I just built over time.
Are you able to talk about any difficult times you've had, challenging times?
Yeah, sure. I'd probably say at the start. So working in M&A, you're working often on multifaceted deals. So you could be working on anything from a public takeover to an acquisition. So that's when one company buys another, or a sale or a pitch. And often you can be simultaneously working on a number of projects. So there's a huge demand in your time. So one of the first things I struggled is with sleep. If I'm getting little sleep, less than 5 hours, it's hard to function at 100%. So that was the difficult thing. I lived quite far out in my first year, which I wouldn't recommend. Often when I was leaving the office at 12 or 1 or later, I would have to get a taxi home and still come back at a decent time. Other things that I found challenging was not bringing my whole self to work. So I'm someone who's super passionate about health and wellness. I am passionate about serving and helping others. But my initial thought was, you're hired for the job, just be good at the job, don't do anything else. Not being completely true to who you are is a burden, and that burden can spill into your day-to-day activities. What about yourself?
Well, what you said about bringing your whole self to work very much resonated with me, because, and that's actually why when I was given the chance to go onto The Apprentice and I wasn't allowed to keep my job as well, it was a very easy decision for me to make, to just be like, right, I'm going to take this opportunity. Because for a long time, I think the culture in most banks is that you're there to do the work and everything else is kind of secondary. I spoke to one girl who, she had a fitness page with 20k followers when we started at the bank, and she was told just to delete her whole page.
Wow.
You know, because especially when you're growing and big on social media, you're representing the bank, and if they don't like how you're showing yourself, they can ask you to take it down. So I definitely felt like I couldn't be myself, and I came in as this, boisterous character who wanted to speak to everybody. But I quickly learned that it's not like uni, the bank. You have to have a certain air of professionalism when you're working. So I found that tough. How would you have said that ways to cope with that?
One of the good things is, post the pandemic, I feel people are highlighting the importance of health and wellness, mental well-being. So the environment now is a lot more conducive. I also think it's important to find your tribe, a group of people who share the common beliefs, share the common traits, and communicate with them. And that often helps you vocalize your ideas. It's important to not isolate yourself, not just from a physical point, but from a mental point. Take opportunities to have a break, take opportunities to see friends, take opportunities to go on holiday, because it's a high pressure job, right? And you are paid to deliver a service, and the service has to be of high quality. I'd say don't get imprisoned by that. Take opportunities to have mental breaks, especially with Total Fit, my company, the health and wellness company. That's what we're promoting with our wellness workshops. And a lot of companies are doing that now, and I think it's really good. We went to Nottingham University, right?
Yes.
I remember that university. That was like the social university. Yeah,
it's part of the reason I went there, definitely. Yeah. To get in, it had some kind of entry requirement.
Of course.
It wasn't a terrible uni, so that's what drew me to it. But also, I wanted to get out of London. I was born and raised in London. I thought I'm going to spend most of my life in London potentially. So yeah, that's why. So when you look outside London, Warwick, Notts, those are the ones that are good unis that, also have a student life.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what did you study?
I did economics.
Amazing.
And look, if I could go back, I probably wouldn't do econ. I found it really hard. And most of all, I didn't enjoy it because I didn't see there to be any practical application to the work I was doing. It was very graphical, very theoretical. I'm not sure what I would do if I could go back in time. I probably wouldn't go to uni at all. And don't get me wrong, I was someone who absolutely loved uni. I think off camera you said Notts was live. It really was live. It's incredible. It's buzzing. Maybe I would have gained entrepreneurial skills more so if I didn't go there.
I understand where you're coming from, and it's a thought that is beginning to resonate a lot more with me. I'm reading the Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, and he talks about 4 quadrants. There's an E for employee, S for small business or self-employed, B for big business, and I for an investor. And he teaches that you can earn money in all quadrants. It's about having the different traits and skills. Going to university is a great experience to not only learn about a degree, but mix with other people in different environments, like you said, having come from London to Notts. However, if you're passionate about something and you're at university and you're not doing something towards your passion, perhaps there's an opportunity cost with the time that could have been spent. Even if your business wasn't moving at a fast rate, over a 5 or 10 year span, you're hopefully going to grow. You're going to go from inception to scaling up to hopefully being a successful business.
And you say over a 5-10 year span you'll grow, and I totally agree with that. But let's take the worst case scenario. Even if you fail, you are 18, you fail one business, and by the time you're 21, all you've got to your name is one failed business. So then you start another one. And where someone has just finished uni and they're in a bit of debt, yes, they know a subject a little bit and they are deemed to be a bit more employable, they haven't got that first-hand experience of running a business, the trials and the tribulations that come with that. So I can honestly say that I've done so many business-related courses and education things in my life. You know, I did business studies A-level, I did an economics degree, and then I worked in a bank for 3 years. But none of those things taught me as much about business as actually running my own business. And I wonder what you think.
I think you touched on failure, which is important. Failure is feedback. I think often people see it as this badge that sticks with you, but it's actually an opportunity for you to take the perspective of it didn't work. I have different avenues to make it work. So if you think of Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, it took him 10,000 times to invent the light bulb, but he saw it as 9,999 times it didn't work. And that's the perspective that most people, if they took, they would see failure as an opportunity to grow, because success is really a poor teacher. Going back to your argument, going to university, it's really what you prefer. You went in like some of my friends and you use it as an opportunity to network and go to the business events, you can make it worthwhile. However, if you go into a job and you end up not liking the job and you're in a ton of debt, you get certain assets or maybe liabilities in some cases. If you get a mortgage, for example, you're now indebted to that mortgage and you have to now work a job in order to pay off the mortgage.
When you're in uni, I agree, there's a way to win. There's a way to play your cards right. And I think what you said about networking, connecting with the right people, getting stuck into societies, because especially if you go to a good uni like Warwick or even like Oxbridge, you're rubbing shoulders with future leaders, future entrepreneurs. The future PM is likely at Oxbridge right now. And that's why, to my younger siblings and to all young people, if you have the capability, I would always recommend going for that one of those 2 unis. But I would honestly say that I was one of the people that played my cards right in uni. You know, I was the vice president of FinTech Society.
Amazing.
I was always selling something, you know, whether it was tickets or, dare I say, cigarettes that I got from duty free. I was always selling something. And I don't think I wasted my time at uni. I made the most of it. But looking back, if I just read books on business and I actually started a business having not gone to uni, I do wonder where I'd be right now. And I just think, I want to ask you actually, why did you go to uni in the first place? Because just for me, I felt like I didn't have any other choice. You know, with my parents, they both went to uni, and yeah, I felt like a bit of a sheep, you know, looking back. Why did you go?
That's an interesting question. So I think from the context of my parents, they were born in Nigeria in primitive surroundings. So my dad used to have to go and carry water on his head from a well every morning before going to school. So school was seen as a saving grace, right? Their mindset was get an education, get a good job, migrate to a country and build. And that worked in their time, right? whoever you spend your time with, and you spend a lot of time with your parents, their ideas can become your ideas. I think in our instances, parents vocalize the importance of education. And again, I don't think education is bad. I think education is good. It's just the type of education you get. University is something that was encouraged. My parents wanted me to be a medical doctor. After going back and forth, I decided to go into the world of finance because I thought I liked the idea of working on deals that were in newspapers. And the most linear route, the route with least resistance, was going to university. Sometimes the route, the least resistance, not always the most lucrative or best route, because if there is a path that fewer people go and you make it, and you have an opportunity to impact more lives, and the more lives you can impact, the more value you can offer, the greater your rewards.
I agree with that. So are you saying that you went to uni because it was kind of drilled into you by your parents who maybe didn't have access to that same education?
Yeah, I think so. Going back to my parents' time, it worked for them, right? And their ideas became my beliefs. I believed uni was a good decision, so I wouldn't say they forced me. I was very happy to go to university. But it definitely indirectly came from wanting me to get a safe and secure job in order to build my life, right? Sounds cliche, but they say you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. Now, if you spend your time with people who have gone the traditional route, if I go back to my cash flow quadrant, they're ease, they're employees, they trade their time for money, they believe in getting high-powered jobs, and those are the ideas that are going to be upon you. But if you spend your time with entrepreneurs, people who have built successful businesses from scratch, out the traditional education route, then the ideas are going to spill on you. And I feel like now I've become a lot more educated and well-informed, and I'm spending time with a lot more entrepreneurs. I'm realizing that my time could have been better spent. I'm not fussed about that time. I'm actually using it as my superpower, and I'm trying to use some of the skills I learned in uni, such as passing exams, learning a lot of information in a condensed period, and I'm using it when it comes to business. So uni does give you some of the skills that you can apply practically to learning about business. It's just about your perspective. It's how you see things.
Very well said.